April 20th, 2019, UFC Fight Night, Overeem vs. Oleinik in St. Petersburg, Russia. The co-main event, Arman Tsarukyan challenging Islam Makhachev on 3 weeks' notice in his UFC debut. Islam Makhachev, going into this fight, was riding a 4-fight win streak. We would see this fight go all 3 rounds, the full 15 minutes, to the judges' scorecards, where Islam Makhachev would secure the unanimous decision 30-27 times 2 and 29-28 times 1. And watching this fight back before jumping into the studio today, it was a lot of grappling, as you would anticipate. So much scrambling, so much clinch work. It just felt like a truly high-level mixed martial arts fight. And that was 5 years ago, when Arman Tsarukyan was, I believe, 22 years old, when Islam Makhachev wasn't even in his prime yet, in beating and facing the best guys in this lightweight division. But even still, it felt as though, even if you were watching it in 2019, both of these gentlemen had very elite futures ahead of them, and now here we are, fast forward 5 years, they're facing one another for the lightweight championship of the world. Significant strikes landed were virtually identical, with Islam landing just 1 more. When we go to the total strikes, we see that Arman landed 13 additional, and in the grappling realm, that was the biggest discrepancy, as Arman Tsarukyan would go 1 of 12 for just an 8% takedown success rate, whereas Islam Makhachev would go 4 for 9 with 6 minutes and 6 seconds of control time. There were submission threats, there were reversals, there was full mount opportunities, and everything in between. We truly got to see a little bit of everything from the grappling realm 5 years ago, but what will we see 5 years later? Since that fight and winning performance for Islam Makhachev, he would have went on to win 9 more fights, 7 of them by way of stoppage. That brings his overall win streak to 14 and his lightweight win streak to 13. The lightweight win streak at 13 is the #1 all-time in the 155-pound weight class, and his 14 win streak overall is 3rd best all-time, just behind Kamaru Usman at 15 and Anderson the Spider Silva at 16. Islam Makhachev will get his crack at the UFC championship in October of 2022 at UFC 280, where he would dethrone Charles Oliveira, who at that time was on one of the most electric title runs that we had seen in this division's history. Makhachev would dominate that fight en route to getting a submission 3 minutes and 16 seconds into the 2nd round. Following that performance, we would see Islam go on to have a pair of fights with the featherweight king at that point in time, Alexander Volkanovski. Their first fight at UFC 284, where Volkanovski was making his first attempt to jump up to 155 pounds and challenge for the lightweight title, was one of the best fights of 2023 and one of the most high-level bouts of the year as well. But we would see Islam Makhachev get the decision victory on the scorecards, a fight that was very competitive, big moments included for both, especially for Volkanovski, who I believe even scored a knockdown in that fight. But in the rematch later on that year in October at UFC 294, Islam Makhachev would leave no doubt. He would not allow the judges to have their say in this fight, as he would knock out Alexander Volkanovski via head kick in the very first round, and it only took 3 minutes and 6 seconds. But you may be wondering, weren't both of those title defenses technically against a featherweight? Well, yes, they were, but his first true title defense against a true lightweight was against Dustin the Diamond Poirier in Islam's lone fight of 2024. That would be back in June at UFC 302, and it was a fantastic fight, a back and forth war. Dustin Poirier put up a lot better of a fight than myself and a lot of the community probably anticipated leading in. But all in all, Islam Makhachev dominated the big moments of that fight, utilized his insane grappling skills in that 5th and final round to secure one of the most beautiful trips you will ever see, and locked in the Darce choke submission in that 5th and final round 2 minutes and 42 seconds in to earn his 3rd title defense. We talked about the win streaks of Islam Makhachev, and now his title defenses in this lightweight division is also tied for the most all-time, and with a victory this weekend at UFC 311 against Arman Tsarukyan, it will be his 4th successful defense of the title, the most in lightweight history. And after the April 20th, 2019 loss from Arman Tsarukyan to the hands of Islam Makhachev in his UFC debut, Arman would go on to tally off 5 consecutive victories, the latter 2 via TKO over Joel Alvarez and Christos Giagos. Those 2 TKO victories would earn him his biggest crack to date if we're talking ranked opponents and name value, being that Islam's name wasn't in 2019 what it is now. And that was against Mateusz Gamrot in June of 2022, a main event slot, one of the best fights of that year and one of the most high-level fights of that year. Are you noticing a trend here when I'm talking about the fights that Arman and Islam have been a part of? High-level mixed martial arts. And although I felt as though Arman Tsarukyan should have gotten the nod on the scorecards that night against Gamrot, the judges would not see it the same, as it was actually a unanimous decision victory for Gamrot. They would go their separate ways. Gamrot had some more big victories, has faltered as well. Arman Tsarukyan has not looked back. He has tallied off 4 straight wins. Demiris Magulov finishes over Joaquim Silva and Beneil Dariush, and then his most recent victory at UFC 300, his only fight in 2024, a decision win over former champion Charles do Bronx Oliveira. And that sets the stage for UFC 311's main event, Islam Makhachev versus Arman Tsarukyan 2. Islam Makhachev, a 14-fight win streak, the current #1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world, 3 title defenses in this 155-pound weight class. Arman Tsarukyan, 9-2 in his UFC tenure, a 4-fight win streak coming in, a win over former champion Charles Oliveira. It doesn't get better than this in the lightweight division. Dare I say, you can't have a more high-level fight in the Ultimate Fighting Championship right now, present moment in 2025, than this fight between Islam Makhachev and Arman Tsarukyan. Take that fight in April of 2019, and what we saw there, the high-level grappling and expertise, the fight IQ from both men, 5 years ago, now times it by 10. That is the leaps and bounds that we've seen both of these gentlemen evolve in the fights that they have had since first meeting. So that all but leads to this moment where we are sure to have a fight deliver. Maybe we won't see 16 knockdowns and close calls, but I can almost guarantee we will not be left bored in this fight. There's just too much riding on it. There's too much high-level skill sets between these two fighters, and the evolution in terms of the striking realm for Islam Makhachev has grown leaps and bounds. Arman Tsarukyan, just as a complete mixed martial artist, has grown. I think we are in for a high-paced, high-octane action fight where we will be exhausted just from witnessing the pressure and the pace that these two put on one another, and much of the same can be said for the co-main event that we are going to get into here shortly. But the main event is set. The stars have aligned. The rematch, 5 years in the making, this time for all the marbles. The #1 pound-for-pound ranking in the world is on the line. Not saying Arman will get that shot, but he could dethrone Islam Makhachev from that title. But also the lightweight championship of the world, one of the most coveted belts in the UFC's illustrious 32-year history, is on the line as well. Something's got to give. Will Arman Tsarukyan get revenge 5 years in the making and become a new champion, all but guaranteeing a trilogy fight between these two? Or will Islam Makhachev settle the rivalry, go up 2-0 over Arman Tsarukyan, and set his sights on bigger things later on in 2025? Give me your thoughts, give me your predictions, give me your bets for this main event in the comments below. And from a high-level lightweight title fight in the main event of UFC 311, we will go to an insanely high-level bantamweight title fight in the co-main event. Merab Dvalishvili on an insane win streak in his own right, much like Islam Makhachev, the champion in the main event. He will be trying to defend his title for the first time against the undefeated phenom that is Umar Nurmagomedov. How fitting that the two fighters at the top of the bill in the main event for the lightweight title, Islam Makhachev and Arman Tsarukyan, combined to be on a 17-fight win streak, and the two gentlemen competing in the co-main event for the bantamweight championship, Merab Dvalishvili and Umar Nurmagomedov, are on a 17-fight unbeaten streak in the UFC. For the newly crowned champion Merab Dvalishvili, we saw him capture the title at Noche UFC at the Sphere, one of the most historic cards in UFC history, given the venue and the production. Paired that with the Mexican Independence Day factor, he fights one of the biggest stars in the UFC at that time and champion at that time, Sugar Sean O'Malley. And Merab, from pillar to post, pretty much dominated this fight. Yes, you may think it was a little bit closer than what meets the eye, but all in all, for me, it was a no-doubt shutout from Merab outside of that body kick that Sean O'Malley landed late into that 5th round. But in order to capture the title, Merab Dvalishvili would have to win not 1,
not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, not 6, not 7.
10 consecutive fights in a row just to get the opportunity to fight for that belt, and he made good on that win streak, made it 11. And not only did he go on a 10-fight win streak and finally get the crack at the title, he had to go through Marlon Moraes, a former title challenger. He had to go through Jose Aldo, former featherweight champion and bantamweight title challenger. He had to go through Petr Yan, former bantamweight champion, and he had to go through Henry Cejudo, former flyweight and bantamweight champion. And then and only then was he able to fight for the belt. Now, yes, you may be saying, whoa, that's not quite how the narrative hits. He could have got it sooner if he elected to fight Aljamain Sterling, his longtime friend, training partner, and borderline brother. I mean, did you see the video on social media? They live right across the street from one another. They can walk to one another and watch fights on the weekends.
Come watch fights here.
What's up, guys?
Looking like middleweight, my brother.
I mean, that is goals, though, let's be honest. All of that hard work, all of the elite names on the resume of Merab Dvalishvili, you're going to be hard-pressed to find a better resume in the bantamweight division's history than what Merab already has in this current state, and he is just now becoming the champion. And yet he has the plus 250 underdog to the challenger #1 contender, 18-0, Umar Nurmagomedov, entering this fight as the betting favorite, minus 310. Umar enters this fight on a 6-fight win streak in the UFC, as alluded to in the intro. We know that he's 18-0 overall, and his biggest win to date in his lone victory over a ranked fighter in the UFC's bantamweight division was in August of 2024, a main event in Abu Dhabi, where he would get the unanimous decision win over former title challenger Corey the Sandman Sandhagen. It was one of the most high-level bouts of 2024, and man, I noticed that I'm saying high level a lot. If that doesn't tell you how amazing these two title fights are at the top of UFC 311, I don't know what will. He did have one other fight in 2024, but it was against a short notice replacement fighter in Bekzat Almakhan, who in the very beginning of that first round actually knocked Umar Nurmagomedov down, but outside of that moment, Umar utterly dominated the remainder. And it's worth noting that he has finishes over UFC veterans Raoni Barcelos and Brian Kelleher as well. Barcelos is actually competing on this very same UFC 311 card against undefeated Peyton Talbot. A big fight to watch out for in the bantamweight division, because I believe by the end of 2025, Peyton Talbot will have his name in the hat here amongst the elite 135ers in the world. But back to the title fight. We see the Nurmagomedov name and automatically assume grappler, Dagestani-style wrestling. That is what Umar is known for and what he does best, but that's not exactly the point. Now, is he fantastic with his wrestling and grappling? Absolutely. I mean, he took Corey Sandhagen down 5 times in their fight last August. But it's the striking that separates Umar from the names of Islam Makhachev, of Tagir Ulanbekov, who's competing on this card, of Khabib Nurmagomedov. Umar separates himself even from Usman Nurmagomedov, the undefeated lightweight champion in Bellator. Well, now I guess it's just the PFL. There's more to that to talk about in the full podcast episode if you want to hear about it. Umar is a elite level striker. He has great kicks right up the middle. He brings in the looping head kicks as well. He's fast, he's crisp, he is technical, he is precise. He is the full package. Let's be quite honest. He is the perfect fighter if you want to talk fight IQ, striking, grappling, everything in between. But is that enough to beat someone that is not human, but is a machine? Throughout this 11-fight win streak that Merab Dvalishvili is on, name a fight that truly is close. He pretty much runs through every single one of his opponents along this multi-fight, 6+ year win streak. And it's against the names that I mentioned, the former champions, the former title challengers. None of them have been able to sniff success against Merab Dvalishvili, maybe outside of a couple strikes here and there. Truly, now that I'm thinking about it, over the course of the win streak, the biggest moment was actually from Marlon Moraes when he almost finished Merab in the first round of their fight before gassing out and getting crushed in that second round and finished at the 4-minute and 25-second mark. But to be able to say that you ran through with no issues a Jose Aldo, a Petr Yan, a Henry Cejudo, an Olympic gold medalist and former 2-weight champion, nobody else can say that they've done that except Merab Dvalishvili. But he's getting disrespected from the side of the bettors and the sports books. What does it all mean? The numbers, Mason, what do they mean? It's going to be crazy to say this, but I'm going to say it. Are we getting a striker versus grappler matchup here, even though a Nurmagomedov name is involved? Because heading into this fight, you know exactly what Merab is going to do. He's going to push a pace that wilts every single opponent that he has faced over the last 6 years. He is not going to stop until he finds success in his realm, and that is by pushing his opponent up against the fence, bringing them down, and melting them with his pressure, with his grappling, and with his wrestling. But will that game plan work against someone like Umar Nurmagomedov, who is fantastic in the grappling and wrestling realm, but in my opinion, for his most reasonable path to success and victory will be to strike against Merab, to hold and maintain distance, something that a long-rangey striker like Sean O'Malley was unable to do. And I think it's absolutely worth noting, aside from the X's and O's that these guys bring in, it is the competition factor. It is the numerous rounds and minutes that Merab has spent in the octagon against the best fighters in the world, whereas Umar Nurmagomedov has spent 5 rounds with one of the best fighters in the world, but outside of that, that's it, right? That is his lone moment of high-level opponents if you want to talk about the elite of the elite at 135 pounds, whereas Merab has quite literally seen it all. What do you think is the biggest question of this Bantamweight Championship main event? Is it the game plan of Merab and if he can press forward with his pace and grappling against Umar? Is it Umar maybe choosing to grapple offensively against someone like Merab, which is something no one goes into and wants to do? Or will it be what I foresee, a striker versus grappler, Merab pushing the pace to wrestle and Umar trying to maintain distance, keep it on the feet, and pick apart Merab, someone who has shown to take shots before? Or outside of those question marks from the X's and O's, is it the experience and resume of Merab that will carry him to victory? Has he just had too much high-level expertise and competition? Umar is just 29 years old, right now is entering his prime, and has the opportunity to end one of, if not the longest win streaks in bantamweight history, and dethrone a newly crowned champion in Merab Dvalishvili. And of course, it's worth mentioning as we finish out both of the title fight breakdowns that Khabib Nurmagomedov is going to be in the corner of both of these gentlemen. One, the champion, and Islam Makhachev trying to remain, and in the co-main event for the challenger Umar trying to dethrone Merab and become the new bantamweight king. Give me all of your thoughts, your opinions, your own breakdown and X's and O's, and your bets for both title fights of UFC 311. Does Islam Makhachev remain and still? Does Umar Nurmagomedov become and new? Give me all your thoughts and everything in between in the comments below. If you enjoyed this breakdown of the UFC 311 title fights, please be sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new. Every single week heading into each card, I break down the biggest and best fights, discuss the most fun storylines, and what is at stake heading into each bout. I recap the most meaningful results every week from every card, and I give my thoughts and opinions on MMA news and fight announcements. You can join the community on social media at Verbal Spar MMA on X, Instagram, and TikTok, and you can follow along on your favorite podcast listening platforms such as Spotify and Apple, where every Monday and Friday, full-length audio episodes released there. Have a great weekend, enjoy the fights, and I will see you in the next video.